Hello, and welcome to the online training for the Kayak Education and Leadership Program, or KELP. San Juan County Park, San Juan Island Kayak Association, and the Whale Museum are working together to educate guides so that you are aware of the guidelines and laws protecting killer whales and other marine wildlife prior to launching kayaks. This training will inform you of your responsibilities when entering the sensitive corridor along the west side of San Juan Island. We will review each of these topics throughout this training. At the end of the training, you will take a short online test. The test consists of multiple choice, true, false, and matching questions. As a first-year guide, you will need to receive an 80% or higher on the test. If you do not receive an 80% or higher, you will need to come back another day and retake the test. The main goal of this online KELP training is to teach recreational and commercial kayakers about the kayak-specific guidelines and laws that were put into place to ensure everyone treats the marine stewardship area and the west side of San Juan Island with respect. As one can see from the photo, hundreds of kayaks can be on the water at any point in time. Operating responsibly in the San Juan County Voluntary No-Go Zone is a second key goal of the KELP training. In 2018, WDFW has extended the voluntary no-go zone from Pile Point to Cattle Point, so it now extends from Mitchell Bay all the way to Cattle Point. State and wildlife managers are asking anglers and boaters to avoid the indicated area along the west side of San Juan Island, where killer whales frequently forage and socialize. This action is needed to provide the whales with a quiet area to feed. For more information, visit WDFW's website. In 2018, San Juan County and the Marine Resources Committee are piloting a program of using a whale warning flag to inform other boaters that whales are present and therefore they must adjust their behavior to ensure that they remain in compliance with Be Whale Wise. The whale warning flag works the same way as a dive or down flag. It will be raised when whales are within 0.65 miles of the boat or land station. Land stations include the county park, lime kiln, and land bank. Once the whales leave the area or the boater leaves the area, they will lower the flag. For kayaks, the county, MRC, and the Whale Museum are requesting the following. If you are launching from the county park or Dead Man's Bay, look to see if the whale warning flag is flying. If it is, remain on shore and wait until the flag is lowered to launch. If you are paddling and see either a boat flying the flag or see the flag raised at a land station, take action to move to shore and raft up, secured to KELP. Remain like this until the flags have been lowered or a flag-bearing vessel has moved more than 0.65 miles from your location. Recreational kayakers and commercial kayak guides who have not gone through this training must go through the training at San Juan County Park. Recreational kayakers receive a tag that is placed 24 inches from the bow of their kayaks after they complete the training. Commercial kayak guides need to take the training at the San Juan County Park Fairgrounds office. After the training, guides will have their photo taken and their name, photo, and company will be forwarded to San Juan County Park staff. In 2018, San Juan County Parks is now requiring guides to be KELP trained from June 1st until September 30th. During the 2016 season, San Juan County Parks took a deeper look into the day use of San Juan County Park by commercial companies. As a result, San Juan County Parks changed their day use policy that was approved by the San Juan County Council. It's limited to 20 people per hour when launching, excluding guides and assistant guides. You must sign in when you arrive. Failure to sign in may result in immediate suspension of the operator's use of San Juan County Park. Only park in designated commercial parking. No commercial parking allowed in public parking spaces. Starting in 2017, all commercial kayak trips landing or launching at San Juan County Park should do so on the south side or left of the kayak path as you're looking at the water. Commercial kayak trips will not land or launch or retrieve kayaks on or near the public boat ramp. The beach closest to the boat ramp and the boat ramp are for recreational use only. All kayaks should be perpendicular to the water at all times. All marine mammals are federally protected from harassment or disturbance under the 1972 Marine Mammal Protection Act and the Canadian Fisheries Act. All vessels, including kayaks, should maintain a minimum distance of 100 yards. Marine mammals that you'll see out on the water include minke whales, Dall's porpoise, harbor seals, fin whales, elephant seals, stellar sea lions, and humpback whales. Paddling towards any of these marine mammals to a distance within 100 yards counts as harassment and disturbance under the Marine Mammal Protection Act, and you and your guest could receive a ticket. A take under the Marine Mammal Protection Act is when any of the following occur: harassment, hunting, capture, or killing a marine mammal. Under the Endangered Species Act, a take is when harassment, direct harm, pursuing, hunting, shooting, wounding, killing, trapping, capturing, or collecting specimens of any endangered species occurs. The maximum penalty for violating the Marine Mammal Protection Act is $11,000. The maximum penalty for violating the Endangered Species Act is $32,500. These fines can be given out to the guide and each guest in violation of these laws. In Washington State, there are 2 levels of fines for violating the Washington State killer whale laws: $150 and $1,025. Washington State Fish and Wildlife are on the water with a killer whale specific staff, and NOAA enforcement is on the water throughout the summer. Tickets were handed out last year. Kayaks and other human-powered vessels are a part of the regulations and can be ticketed. Do not disturb, move, feed, or touch any marine wildlife, including harbor seals. Avoid paddling near haulouts and resting sites. If you are unable to paddle 100 yards away, make sure you avoid seal pups. Don't create a lot of extra noise or splashes or sudden movements that will cause the harbor seals to flush or the birds to spook. Harbor seals carry diseases that are harmful to humans. Make sure to give the space that they need, especially during pupping season when mother seals are more protective. Seal pups are often left alone on a beach so that the mother can find food. This does not count as a stranded pup. Human interference with the seal pup will keep the mother seal from returning and providing the care that it needs to survive. If you find a marine mammal that is in distress, entangled, or has died, call the Whale Museum Stranding Network. Do your best to report the date, time, location, description of the animal, including size and injury, and what condition it is in, and if you were able to get photos. In 2005, NOAA designated the southern resident killer whales as a distinct population segment and listed them under the ESA with a Priority 3 status. The population is declining due to continued threats. Actions, including more research, should be taken to potentially enable a full recovery. The Salish Sea, along with the rest of the inland waters of Washington State, was designated a southern resident killer whale critical habitat in 2006. SRKW population declines were primarily due to live captures in the 1960s. There is still one surviving southern resident in captivity, and her name is Lolita or Tokite. Currently, at the end of 2017, the Center for Whale Research announced 76 individuals were left in the population. The population changes all the time. Make sure you are up to date on the numbers of each pod. J-Pod has 23, L-Pod is at 35 members, and K-Pod has 18. Potential threats to the southern resident population and the main reasons they were listed as endangered include decrease in prey availability, persistent toxins, vessels and sound disturbance, and oil spills. Fraser River Chinook salmon makes up 80 to 85% of their diet. These salmon are listed as endangered in the United States, but not in Canada, making their survival that much more complicated. Other threats include disease, fungal infections, live captures, and oil spills. Oil spills were included mainly because of what happened to the AT-1 pod in Alaska after the Exxon Valdez spill. The oil spill basically caused them to breathe in oil, fumes, chemicals, etc., causing harm to their internal organs. The AT1 pod is listed as depleted under the MMPA and are of great concern since there are no breeding-age females in the pod. Persistent toxins, one of the three primary causes of decline in the southern resident killer whales, are prevalent throughout the food web. The three main toxins that scientists are looking for in the SRKWs are PCBs, an industrial byproduct, PBDEs, or flame retardants found in furniture, clothing, plastics, and in the chemicals used to fight wildfires, and DDT, the pesticide that was banned in the 1970s. Each of these toxins have incredible longevity, and once they're in their environment, we have no way of getting them back out, especially from the oceans. The diagram shows how PCBs specifically enter the food web from sewers, stormwater runoff, industries, and pollution. Higher quantities than originally thought are in the food web due to PCBs being directly absorbed into phytoplankton and zooplankton. This means salmon are at risk primarily in their younger years. High quantities of toxin in Chinook have shown to cause serious health problems, including slower growth rates, reduced immunity to disease, and altered hormone levels. This is the main food source for the southern resident killer whales and is the same salmon most local recreational fishermen consume. If toxins are changing hormone levels and growth rates in salmon, think what they can do to killer whales that consume 100 to 200 pounds of salmon per day. The killer whale is the largest member of the dolphin family. They have a worldwide distribution. There are three main ecotypes of killer whales: residents, transients, and offshore killer whales. These names are based on food preferences. Residents eat fish and feed mainly on salmon, herring, lingcod, or halibut. Residents have distinct dialects among each community, such as northern versus southern residents, and even different calls between family groups or pods. Transient killer whales eat mammals and are usually the killer whales you see flushing harbor seals off ice floes or the rocks, or beaching themselves for seals in Argentina. Here in the Salish Sea, transient killer whales eat mainly harbor seals and harbor porpoise. They often travel in much smaller groups than residents and rarely vocalize unless they are hunting. Offshore killer whales are just that. They are rarely seen anywhere except the open ocean and are commonly found in large groups of 100 to 300 whales. They are known to eat sharks and fish and are more closely related to resident killer whales than transients. All three ecotypes of killer whales differ in their diet, social grouping, genetics, morphology, dialect, and culture, and can be found in the Pacific Ocean. Because of these differences, there is no communication, interaction, or mating between the ecotypes. Each whale is identified by unique saddle patch, dorsal fin height and shape, nicks and scratches. Their saddle patches are different on either side of the animal, and each saddle patch is as unique to that animal as our fingerprints are to us. Both male and female whales stay with their mother for life. In the photo below, the large fin that you see is an adult male killer whale. The fins can reach up to about 6 feet high, although the southern resident community of whales is typically smaller, so their fins are just under 6 feet high. An adult female's fin can get up to about 3 feet high. What is the federal law? In 2011, NOAA implemented the most recent killer whales law for the inland waters of Washington state. This law applies to all ecotypes of killer whales and is applicable to all types of vessels, including motorboats, sailboats, kayaks, paddleboards, and canoes. The law states that it is unlawful to cause a vessel to approach in any manner to any killer whale within 200 yards or position your vessel to be in the path of the killer whales within 400 yards. Kayaks were included in these laws based on research presented to NOAA showing that non-motorized vessels do indeed have an impact on killer whales and their behavior. In 2012, Washington state implemented the same vessel law but determined that it only applied to the southern resident killer whales. However, keep in mind if your kayak is within 200 yards of a transient killer whales, you are in violation of the federal law and could receive a fine. Distance can be hard to measure on or off the water. How does a person know if they are within 200 yards or 400 yards of killer whales, or even 100 yards of marine mammals? To help with this question, many years ago, San Juan County Park put up a killer whale dorsal fin on the shoreline adjacent to the kayak launch path sign. The distance between the sign and the dorsal fin is 200 yards. One key way to remember that is if you are able to ID the killer whale from their saddle patch from your kayak, you are most likely closer than 200 yards. Here is another view of what 200 and 100 yards looks like. From the kayak path, the dorsal fin is 200 yards to your left. When looking to your right at low tide, you will see rocks along the water's edge. These rocks are 100 yards away from you, or one full football field. You should be a minimum of 100 yards from all marine mammals. If you are able to see the whites in their eyes, you are closer than 100 yards and should take action to move further away. A take, disturbance, or harassment is determined by the behavior of the killer whales and what a vessel does to change that behavior. So, for instance, traveling killer whales hold a steady up-down behavior and maintain their direction of travel, usually in groups. Social behavior includes things like breaching, tail slaps, belly flops, kelping, or playing with kelp, spy hops, peck slaps, and much more. Resting killer whales are seen more recently as very, very slow travel with little forward movement. Foraging behavior is determined by food in mouth, high arch dives where their backs are fully arched out of the water, fast turns, or sharking where you only see the tip of their dorsal fin moving quickly at the surface. As an example of a take, say you have killer whales that are foraging. Your group paddles to them or rafts up and the whales stop foraging and start to travel. That means your group has caused their behavior to change, and it's a violation of the law and you can be fined. Unfortunately, what you also did is take away that moment of foraging for salmon that they desperately need to survive. There are many different programs that are researching the southern resident killer whales. NOAA is focusing on determining habitat use for critical habitat designation, fecal sampling to determine what the killer whales are eating and at what quantity, and by deployment of D-tags or suction cup tags, they are determining what level of noise the whales hear from their environment, as well as how deep the whales dive, how fast they travel, etc. Their initial finding is that killer whale clicks and calls are masked by vessel noise, and for every decibel of noise increased in their environment, they increase their call's amplitude by a decibel. Their Southwest Fisheries Science Center and the Coastal Ocean Research Institute, researchers are using a hexacopter to fly over the southern residents to document body conditions at the beginning and end of the season. In 2018, they are also attempting to collect blow samples. The Center for Whale Research has been completing photo identification and a population census of the southern residents since the 1970s. Twice a year, usually in July and December, they announce the current population count. The Center for Conservation Biology is focusing on fecal sampling using conservation canines or scat detection dogs. This research focuses on individual DNA analysis, prey analysis, thyroid, reproductive, and cortisol hormone levels, and persistent toxins found in the killer whales. Their goal is to determine how all three main threats are affecting the southern residents. Since 1993, the Whale Museum has operated the Soundwatch Boater Education Program. This research focuses on boater education as well as vessel trends from all types of vessels since 1993. The data has been instrumental in informing management for the best policies and regulations. All NOAA-permitted researchers have a yellow flag on the back of their vessel. Any other research that does not have a permit does not have a flag. Soundwatch Boater Education Program aims to be on the water nearly every day during the summer months. Their purpose is to educate boaters on current guidelines and regulations before they leave the shore as well as when they're on the water. So Soundwatch participates in many dock talks with our partner, the Stranding Network. Soundwatch also provides a scientific platform for monitoring vessel activities. Soundwatch is assisted by trained volunteers following rigorous data recording protocols. We would welcome you to volunteer. Small unmanned aircraft systems, or drones, are a growing industry. It's important to know the laws and guidelines if you're going to use them, especially around marine mammals on the west side of San Juan Island. MMPA, ESA, NOAA guidelines require that you keep a safe aerial distance of at least 1,000 feet above marine mammals in the wild. It's also required that you have an FAA and NOAA permit to fly over any marine mammals. Drones are prohibited in national parks, Washington state parks, and in San Juan County parks. Drones are included in the Washington state killer whale laws. A violation will result in a ticket. Here are a few more regulations as stipulated by the FAA. Drones must stay within visual line of sight of the remote pilot in command and manipulating the flight controls. Daylight-only operations. Maximum altitude is 400 feet above ground level. No operations from a moving vehicle, including kayaks or boats, and the person operating small UAS must either hold a pilot airman certificate with small UAS rating or be under direct supervision of a person who does. When you are kayaking around the San Juan Islands, you are doing so in a marine stewardship area. This is designated by the Marine Resources Council of San Juan County in 2004. There are 5 main components of the MSA. The first one is the Whale Exclusion Zone. This is located on the west side of San Juan Island. In 2018, the zone is extended to run from Mitchell Point and continues south-southeast to K.E.L.P Point. The zone covers all water from shore to 1/4 mile offshore, as seen here as a light blue shaded area. All national wildlife refuges are also part of the marine stewardship area. These are seen as orange circles. There are 3 bottom fish recovery zones on the west side of San Juan Island: K.E.L.P Bluff, Limekiln Point, and Pile Point. Sensitive eelgrass makes up a large portion of the marine stewardship area. It's located all over San Juan County and can be seen in green. Marine reserves are shown in red: Point Caution, False Bay, Yellow, and Low Islands, and the southwest of Shaw Island. Remember to take extra caution in these regions. This map looks more closely at the marine stewardship area and the regions you will encounter on the west side of San Juan Island. Marine reserves are protected through the University of Washington for scientific research since 1923. Please make sure you respect the area. The species within the intertidal zone are most likely part of ongoing research. National refuges are part of a national network of lands and waters for the conservation, management, and where appropriate, restoration of the fish, wildlife, and plant resources and their habitats within the United States for the benefit of present and future generations. All 3 bottom fish recovery zones were set up in the late 1990s. In 2009, MRC teamed with WDFW on the Rockfish Recovery Plan. WDFW has implemented recreational depth and area restrictions and closed commercial fisheries that target rockfish or have a high potential to encounter them as bycatch. Descending devices are for rockfish with barotrauma. Barotrauma is when the swim bladder extends out of the mouth of the rockfish because it was brought to the surface too quickly. Remember, the voluntary motorboat exclusion zone extends from shore to 1/4 mile offshore with a 1/2 mile bubble around Limekiln Point State Park. In 2018, the voluntary zone extends from Mitchell Bay to K.E.L.P Point. Sensitive areas include eelgrass beds, haulouts, and nesting sites. Eelgrass provides critical habitat for juvenile fish and plays an important role in the ecosystem. Avoid dropping anchor, disturbing the eelgrass with paddles, and or motoring through eelgrass beds. There are 83 national wildlife refuges in San Juan County. Avoid approaching within 200 yards of a national wildlife refuge to avoid disturbing haul-out areas for seals, sea lions, and or seabird nesting sites whenever possible. No landings are permitted except at designated areas. Low Island off the shore at San Juan County Park is a national wildlife refuge. Travel close to the shoreline, avoid rafting in the kelp beds, and remember to give the island plenty of space during your trips. At the request of San Juan County's Land Bank, and in an effort to reduce the congestion at Deadman's Bay Beach, all commercial kayakers, guides, or guests should only use the south or right side of Deadman's Bay Beach only. The remaining part of the beach is for recreational public use. Do your best to stagger arrival times on the beach, including varying lunch breaks. If there are a lot of kayaks already there, paddle your group around the bay and then head to the beach, or spend extra time looking in the tide pools. If you're one of the groups on the beach, make sure you are courteous to the other groups out there. Make sure you limit the amount of time spent on the beach. If you have all of your guests and see a big group coming towards the beach, move your kayaks up further or get back in and paddle out. Remember to be respectful of the area. Every year, as part of a NOAA contract, Soundwatch and the Whale Museum look at the trends of whale watching. There has been an overall increase in the number of people whale watching, whether that is on land, in a boat, or in a kayak. In 2015 and 2016, it's estimated over 300,000 people visited Limekiln State Park. According to the sign-in sheets recorded by guides every time they launch a trip at San Juan County Park, commercial kayaking has been increasing since 2004, with over 12,000 people launching from San Juan County Park each summer. Part of the KELP collaboration is the Kayakers Code of Conduct. In addition to the local, state, federal laws and/or guidelines, there are additional kayaking guidelines that all commercial guides should follow. These guidelines were set up to further minimize the impact that kayaks could have on marine wildlife, especially killer whales. The San Juan Island Kayak Association has suggested commercial kayak tours shall follow all local, state, and federal laws and guidelines governing behavior around killer whales and other wildlife. Commercial kayak tours will not intentionally position themselves or paddle into the path of killer whales. When killer whales are approaching, commercial kayak tours will make their way to the nearest shore to avoid the potential path of killer whales. And when killer whales are present and at least 200 yards offshore, commercial kayak tours will operate within 100 yards of shore to avoid the potential path of killer whales. Kayaking around the San Juan Islands is very challenging. Water conditions vary with tide cycles, currents, wind strength, rain, etc. Before you head out on the water, make sure you've looked at the following items and know what your plan of action will be if something unexpected happens on the water. Accessible public areas outside of marine reserves and private land, what are safety issues within your group that you should be aware of? Do you know what the weather forecast is for the day? Do you know when the tides will change? How does that affect your trip plan? Are you departing on a 3-day trip? Will you be paddling by protected wildlife areas such as national wildlife refuges? Are you confident you are aware of the laws and guidelines for the area? Cold water shock is the first stage of sudden and unexpected immersion in cold water. Cold water is anything 15 degrees Celsius or 59 degrees Fahrenheit and lower. It usually occurs within the first minute of exposure or submersion and likely causes more deaths than hypothermia. Hypothermia differs from cold water shock because it is due to prolonged exposure to cold water temperatures. Signs to watch for in your guest include shivering or no shivering at all, lack of coordination, slurred speech, or confusion. The Salish Sea is an average of 45 degrees Fahrenheit or 12 degrees Celsius. Make sure you and your guest are dressed appropriately for the weather, cold water conditions, and the trip ahead. Assessing the situation prior to leaving the shore is part of a guide's situation awareness. The more you pay attention to your surroundings, including the killer whales and other marine wildlife, the less likely you'll be caught in violation of guidelines and regulations. There are 3 things you can do before leaving the shore. 1. Observe the whale's travel pattern. Are they going north or south, slow or fast, directional or irregular? Remember, the whales like to travel back and forth on the west side, and it's possible to see them multiple times during your trips. 2. Launch your kayaks only if you can maintain 200 yards from the side of the whales and 400 yards out of their path. And 3. If they are traveling close to shore, you should keep your guest on shore and walk to the nearest point. They will most likely have a better view of the whales than if you try to get everyone into their kayaks. As a guide, you should be constantly assessing your situation, your group dynamics, and changing your travel pattern as needed. This means paying attention to where the whales are traveling and moving out of the way well before the whales are within 400 yards. There are 4 steps to do this. 1. Move as close to shore as you can. 2. Tuck into a cove and avoid stopping your group on a headlands where currents are stronger. 3. Raft in a kelp bed if you can to help anchor your group in place. And 4. Wait to launch your kayaks if you are unable to stay out of the whale's path. These two photos show how two different groups behaved around the whales. The top photo shows great planning by the trip guide, and the group is rafted in a cove, anchored to kelp, and is safely outside the state and federal laws. The bottom photo shows poor planning by the trip guide. The group is not only in the path of the killer whales, but they are spread out, not rafted, not close to shore, and are still paddling. These are all violations of the Kayaker's Code of Conduct and the state and federal laws. There are absolutely times when you can still paddle. If the whales are further than 1/4 mile offshore, closer to the commercial vessels than they are to your group, continue your trip, but keep an eye out for single animals that may be traveling away from the group. If you find yourself out of compliance with the laws and regulations, you should do the following. 1. Paddle out of the path of the whales 400 to 200 yards away and raft up. And 2. Immediately raft up and stop paddling if you are within 200 yards of whales, and wait until the whales have passed before continuing to paddle. Remember, 200 yards is 2 football fields, or the distance from the kayak path launch sign to the dorsal fin on shore at San Juan County Park. The water conditions, marine wildlife, and your guest will have you continually assessing your situation and adjusting your course as needed throughout your trip. What do you do in bad water conditions? How do you manage strong currents? Lime Kiln will have tourist and strong currents. Edwards and Powell Points are close to Hannah Heights. How are you managing the currents with marine wildlife in the area? Remember, there are always people watching. K.E.L.P Bluff and Bellevue Point can be very dangerous in strong winds and currents. Are you comfortable with your skill level to safely lead your group through these conditions? If there is a strong wind, big waves, etc. at K.E.L.P Bluff, take your trip through Mosquito Pass. Don't push your guests beyond their experience level or comfort level. Safety should be a priority on the water. These are usually congested areas with boats traveling. In these high-impact areas, there are several key things to remember. Stay inshore. Keep your group together. Be mindful of currents. Watch for boat traffic. Watch for marine wildlife. And remember vessel safety. As you are on the water, this K.E.L.P training should prompt you to ask yourself a few questions. If I launch, can I stay more than 400 yards out of the path and at least 200 yards away from the whales? Should I wait and watch from shore? When I see whales and/or a line of boats approaching, do I need to adjust my position? Is our group too spread out? Can I get closer to shore? Where is a good cove to tuck into? Does it have a kelp bed I can paddle into and stay put? Have all the whales passed by? Can I paddle on? San Juan Island Kayak Association has a few last reminders for all kayak guides and companies. When approaching wildlife areas, guides shall place themselves as the closest kayak to the wildlife to assure proper distances are maintained. All commercial kayak tours shall educate their guests on San Juan Island Kayak Association guidelines prior to launching. And San Juan County Parks and San Juan Island Kayak Association member kayak companies are required to identify themselves as commercial kayaks by placing a sticker on the bow of the kayaks no less than 24 inches from the bow. If companies are renting kayaks, all commercial stickers should be removed to ensure San Juan County Parks and Soundwatch are aware that they are recreational paddlers. As a key launch for recreational kayakers, San Juan County Parks has extended their permit system to assure that all recreational users, human-powered and motorized alike, are informed of the current laws and guidelines. The new recreational users permit system is consistent with policy within the county code. Commercial permits have been in existence for a number of years and include terms that hold the guides of these tour companies accountable to a high professional standard. All trip guides and guests must complete County Parks approved Kayaker Code of Conduct training prior to launching from the park. There is possible permit revocation for companies that receive a warning or violation for activities related to marine mammals from an enforcement officer. Soundwatch is on the water throughout the summer months. If you have questions or concerns, please call the boat phone number or hail us on the radio. We monitor channels 16, 69, and 79. The boat phone number is 360-317-4464. On behalf of the San Juan County Parks, San Juan Island Kayak Association, and the Whale Museum, we would like to thank you for participating in the KELP training. You are now ready to take the Kayak Education and Leadership Program test. As a first-year guide, you will need to receive an 80% or higher to be able to launch kayak trips from San Juan County Park. If you do not receive an 80% or higher, you will be asked to retake the test on another day. If you do receive an 80% or higher, your photo will be taken and sent to San Juan County Park along with your name and company. All test results are immediately sent to the Soundwatch coordinator and Donna Wuthnow from San Juan County Parks. Good luck!